Mayor will call to order the meeting of the Zoning Board of Bartlett. The Zoning Board of Appeals, the Village of Bartlett, Counties of Cook, DuPage, and Kane. Please call the roll.
Mike Weirden.
Here.
George Cozio.
Here.
Tom Floyd.
Here.
Bob Bucaro.
Here.
Patty Hansen. Here. Robert Carney.
Here.
Linda Hansen.
Okay, you have before you the October 3rd minutes. Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Village of Bartlett Zoning Board of Appeals minutes from October 3rd, 2013.
Second.
Moved by Patty and seconded by Robert. Please call the roll. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Patty Hansen.
Yes.
Robert Carney.
Yes.
Tom Floyd.
Abstain.
Bob Bucaro.
Yes.
George Cozio.
Abstain.
Mike Weirden.
Yes. Okay. The only item on the agenda is case 1321, the text amendment. Take it away, staff.
I'm going to do this one. It's probably been a while since you remember impervious surface as a policy with the zoning ordinance update, because it was back in 2008, I believe we did that.
I'm trying to remember what a text amendment is.
Yeah. Well, those I don't remember. But anyway, back in that time, we identified 15 policy issues that went along with the overall comprehensive rezoning. Other than just updating the ordinance, getting out the old language, there were some policy issues. Of those 15 policy issues, as you see in your memo, we've dealt with 6 of them so far in our 4 chapters that we have completed and had text amendments on and actually changed the zoning ordinance. Those being updating accessory uses and structures, updating fence regulations, specified and clarified home occupation standards, the dog run standards. We eliminated, the last big thing we did was eliminate the SR1 and the I2 zoning districts and rezone those properties to the appropriate residential and industrial categories. With Chapter 5, we decided we wanted to do impervious surface quickly because we've been involved in some projects that have been a result of our 2008 flood. We've done the big stormwater detention pond behind Home Depot. We've worked with the Village of Streamwood to annex some property up on the northeast part of the village, and we just received a grant to do a big detention area there in addition to some of the work that we've done up there. We are updating the DuPage County Stormwater Ordinance where impervious surface standards are come into play in reviewing the ordinance for individual lots that exist in the county. And without going into great detail, basically you have to provide an adequate stormwater detention for new construction in your home or if you're doing major additions to a home, and that's in the new DuPage County Stormwater Ordinance. Kind of dovetails with our impervious surface standards, which is something that the county greatly encourages. A lot of communities have those. We only separated this out from Chapter 5 because Chapter 5 has another 90 pages that we'll be dealing with in the near future, and we're not quite done with that to bring it to you, but we should after the first of the year sometime. We have to settle on, it involves a lot of different things, but religious land use law and defining different uses within the zoning district. We thought we'd pull out impervious surface standards in there. They are in each residential zoning district so that they do affect the residentially zoned properties in the village in all the different districts. And essentially the purpose of the regulation is to minimize impact of drainage, impervious surface on and minimize impermeable areas on lots that can affect drainage on neighboring lots. We are creating standards that apply to all structures. Right now they are only really provide the structures in the rear yard. It also helps to preserve green space and runoff collected through the village's stormwater system and improve that. And there's also, it regulates tear downs and what can be replaced. It's involved in regulating tear downs and what can be replaced on those lots. Our original recommendations, the percentages were a little, we just decided to go with a few percentages. However, after several meetings and reviews, you actually did see this sometime back then as a policy issue, and it evolved into our current standards that we are proposing to adopt and are the subject of the text amendment. The text amendment is very short. It's, a paragraph or two, but essentially it's limiting impervious surfaces, structures, and it assigns a percentage to different lots. And I'll just go over those real quickly. And as I go over those, Sonia will show you up on the screen. The first lot, we show an example of a lot size, the impervious area, and what is allowed in that particular district. In the ER3 district, which is our 20,000 square foot lots, we're allowing a 30% maximum coverage. This particular lot's at almost 30%. So this person, in terms of their coverage, they would be right at the maximum. They would have to eliminate some of their surface if they were to wanting to build an addition or put in another structure. They would have to, or they could make some of the driveway permeable pavers. Those count. So there's some techniques that are coming out that will improve those types of things in terms of hardcore surfaces. You can make them a little softer in accepting water. The next district, the SR2, one that's up there on the screen, is not quite yet. There it goes. This is a SR2 lot of 11,320 square feet. The impervious surface is just under 3,500. The percentage of this is 30%. In this district, you'd be allowed 35%. So you could have additional impervious surface area and still be under the maximum allowed. Another SR2 example is an 11,000 square foot lot where the impervious surface is 3,400 square feet. This lot's 31%. The maximum allowed is 35%. That deck is not impermeable, so it has openings and it does drain. So those, if it was a cement deck, around a pool, that would be considered, so it would bump that up. But this one's not. Our SR3 lots, again, another 8,650 square foot property. The impervious surface 3,100. With the smaller lot, we went up to a 40% allowed. This lot's at 35%. So they have some leeway to put on addition or patio if they want. Or if they wanted to do more than that, they could do an impermeable surface on the patio. Another SR3 lot, similar scenario. It's a corner lot. Again, the 40%'s allowed. They're at 35%. SR4 lot, this one is 40% is allowed. This one's, believe it or not, this one's at 36%. But if they wanted to go, to do something, that brick patio could be maybe changed into permeable pavement or some of the sidewalk around there. The object being you want to minimize the drainage runoff in a storm situation. Another SR4 lot, again, the impervious surface at 40%. This lot is at 40%. We thought I'd show an example. So this person would have some work to do if they wanted to add another impervious surface. We also cover duplex properties. This particular duplex area is a lot size of, this is only showing half of the duplex, just the way that the survey came in. This one's at, we allow 45%, this one's at 38%. And then the second duplex is allowed again 45%, and this one's at 40%. So there's some room there. We believe that about 2% of the properties in the village, particularly on the north side, would be immediately non-conforming. We can't cover all that. There could be more, but that's kind of our estimate based on reviewing the air photos and the surveys that we have through over 10,000 lots in the village. So that's not a big percentage. You could, though, we couldn't cover all those if you went to 50%, or there's always going to be somebody that's going to be made non-conforming when you do something like this. But we do believe that's right around 2%, or I think it was the 211 lots is what we counted.
That would be 2% of the total number of...
Yeah, but that was the lot count that we had. So and then there would be options for variances, or there's other things that could be done, and the county has a lot of techniques to improve and minimize the impact of storm events, not only on existing detention areas, existing storm sewers. This kind of fits in with that kind of overall county movement towards that. Even though we're in 3 counties, we use the DuPage County Stormwater Ordinance. It's above and beyond the normal stormwater detention. Again, the older lots typically don't cover the stormwater detention areas that or requirements that would be for a new subdivision. So you have some impact in those older areas. So that is pretty much it in a nutshell. As I said, the regulations are small. We've given you the actual language is not very long. We've given you meeting minutes where it's been discussed before as a policy, but this is actually the text amendment that we need to have the public hearing on. So I'll stop and I'll answer any questions if you have any.
We're probably going to run into situations then, especially in some of the older portions of Bartlett, where, let's say there's a fire and they want to restore the house back to the way it was. They might meet the setback requirements, but they would not meet the impervious percentages, right? So they would come to us for a zoning variance just like anything else.
They could do that, or if it's a rebuild, then there's an opportunity to take, say, the driveway and make some of the driveway a permeable surface using the pavers that have the grass growing through those and allows that. You could do something like that to reduce that. We have some of those areas in town where we've used them in parking spaces up on Oak Avenue. There's parking spaces off the parkway there that have the grass growing through those. We've got some buildings that use those types of permeable areas. So it could be a combination of both. But a variance would be another option.
I'm not, as I'm looking at this, I guess I was, before I looked at anything, I would have thought that the rules on impervious, whatever you want to call it, surfaces would be more engineering oriented than just lot size oriented. I mean, that's what everybody else is doing, and I can understand it's certainly the easiest way to go. But I would suspect that there are some areas of the village where the issue of drainage is worse than in other areas, yet lot size is the same in 2 different areas, have the same restrictions. And it seems like you really need more restrictions in some areas where we're aware of drainage issues.
Yeah,
that's why
I agree with that. They tend to be the old.
That really makes it very, very complex ordinance that you're almost looking at every lot.
The newer, excuse me, there's something in the air here. This heating system has a lot of dust in it. The newer areas are taken care of by the detention areas. Thank you, Julie. whereas the older areas just aren't. The older parts of town, we still have combined sewers. Newer parts of town, we have separate storm sanitary sewers. That helps. It's just that, and you find that in most communities in this part of the county. Typically, the older parts of town get hit. They didn't have the standards they do today. So this tries to help that. I think what's going to help it the best is our detention areas that we've been building. But it's every little bit kind of helps is kind of the attitude of it. Thank you, Mike.
Now, Jim, at this time, this is only strictly for residential, correct?
It is.
Will we eventually go through the commercial portion of it?
We cover our commercial in our site plan reviews, and most of the commercial areas have detention areas, but it could extend to that. But what we do in our site plan reviews, we encourage the bioswales. We have the landscaping requirements that dictate a certain amount of impermeable area in the landscaping beds by design within the parking lots. Same thing with the industrial area. So it's not as crucial in those as it is in some of the single-family lots. And in the county's new ordinance that's coming on, in single-family lots that don't have detention areas, you have to provide some type of on-site detention on some of your lots that are created. So you have to show that those lots aren't negatively impacting the drainage of surrounding properties. And they're getting pretty strict about it.
Do we have many issues of flooding in the older parts of town here?
We have. And the last big event was 2008. We probably have we've probably had some minor events since that time.
Well, we did earlier this year in April. We had
Yeah.
a big event, and the streets were flooded here. A couple of streets were flooded here in the downtown area.
Yeah. And
For a
that's
bit.
one of the reasons that we've put in some detention. And I don't know if you read or not, but recently we received that grant from the Federal Emergency Management Agency to put in another detention area that helps in the Hearthwood Farms Prospect area. We purchased a piece of property. We're going to be by the superwash there.
Yep.
We're going to be putting in a big detention area there. And then north of it, that's that area that's in Streamwood that we annexed. We put a big detention there. And we're hoping, ideally, that will solve any of those problems up there.
Have we looked at increasing the storm sewer size as far as being able to handle the capacity when floods come versus restricting surfaces?
I think
Or is the retention area going to take care
they
of it?
looked at the retention area. The storm sewers up there are with the old combined systems. You'd have to tear up all the streets, put in the combined systems. I think that the detention area, although they're expensive, it's like $5 million. I think tearing up all those streets and putting in all new separate sewers would be even more expensive. Yeah. But that's there is not in that those particular areas. There's not separate sewers like they are in the DuPage areas of town.
Is that the only area that has combined sewers, like north of the tracks? And
That's
east
pretty
of the
much,
golf course?
yeah. East of the golf course, right. Some of the stuff around the golf course is newer, and so they would have the separate sewers. In those developments up kind of like in the northwest part of town. But yeah, that area, the older part of town. And that's not just Bartlett. It's all old parts of the towns in DuPage County and have them, and even in Kane, all the older parts of town. There's very few towns that have gone in and done that sewer program where they've separated in their older parts of town. You might have it on a street or two, but generally they try to solve it with detention or ordinances like these.
And I was glad to see that this is coming to completion, because whether it be old property with new construction or new property with new construction, that this is something that is very important. It gives us a standard to point to and establishes a base from which we can work in the future, much better than having nothing. And I think it's a good move.
Good?
Jim, you said most of the 211 lots that would be non-conforming is in the old section.
I think generally they are. I don't know if we might have had some down on Newport in that area, not Newport,
We
but
might have a few in some of the
Voyager.
newer subdivisions with some of the larger houses with 3-car garages that perhaps because we
basketball
don't have
court.
any lot coverage restrictions right now have put in
Right.
a great deal of things in their backyard. So you might have a few oddball here and there on larger lots that should be able to accommodate more, but because they've packed them so full of things like basketball courts and in-ground pools and tennis courts and things like that, along with their 3-car garage and the driveway that accompanies that, they start pushing, and you saw in this one here, that's the ER3 one, pardon me, they put in a very large pool in their backyard. Well, they're right at their 30%. So if they wanted to do something, they would be limited to doing something like a nice deck in their backyard. They would not be able to do a large patio in their backyard. They would have to go with the deck situation, or they would have to choose to go with a permeable paver as opposed to a standard paver if they wanted to do a patio. So there's, I think, going to be an oddball lot on where you think you would be able to accommodate more because they're larger lots, but people have, because we don't really have any restrictions, really packed things in on those lots. So I don't think there's going to be as many in those areas as you would see in the downtown, where you have smaller lots with perhaps additions that have been added on over the years, a detached garage, the long driveway that goes to it, a patio they've put in, a shed they've put in. That, again, because we don't really have coverage restrictions for the rear yard other than for an accessory building, I think the biggest place we saw when looking at the aerial photographs and kind of eyeing things out, it looked like the biggest impact was going to be in the downtown area.
Okay.
And that's not to say that every house, it's not going to be like 200 of them are in the downtown area, but that's just, given looking at an aerial photograph and seeing what was there, we're kind of generalizing that it looks like it's about 2%.
Any further questions or discussions or motion?
So what do we need, a motion to approve this? Is that what we need at this point, Jim? Or?
Well, you should ask if there's anybody in the public that want to speak at the public hearing,
Right.
and then a motion recommending to the board approving it would be appropriate.
Okay.
All right, we'll open it up to the public. Anyone out in that audience have anything to say? And now we'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion that we send a positive recommendation to the board concerning the impervious service standards for single-family zoning districts. Text amendment.
Second.
Okay, at this point, I shall close the public hearing. We have a motion by Patty, seconded by George, to recommend approval of the text amendment. Please call the roll. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Patty Hansen,
Yes.
George Cosio,
Yes.
Tom Floyd,
Yes.
Robert Carney,
Yes.
Bob Caro,
Yes.
Mike Werden.
Yes. Okay, it's been unanimous. We'll pass on a positive recommendation. Old business, new business.
The new business, sort of old business, is if you have not RSVP'd to the Christmas open house next Friday, let us know by tomorrow so we can pass that along to the administrative staff that they can count how many people are coming. It's always a fun time. It's next Friday from 5 to 8. You should have all gotten an invite in the mail, but I think they came in the mail. They didn't come by email. But
Right.
if you are planning on going, if you have not RSVP'd, you still have a couple of days, so let us know.
I got Scott's voicemail, and he didn't call back, so I'm presuming that I'm counted? Okay.
That you've RSVP'd then, so. And I don't know if there's going to be a meeting next January. We don't think so, in the January meeting. So if you don't come to the Christmas party, then have a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next year, and a
Same
Happy
to
New
you.
Year.
I have a question. They're supposed to do some rehabilitation work on 20 going through the village.
Yes.
Is that just putting in a center turn lane, basically?
I don't know the extent of the project. I know it involves some turning lanes. It's mainly something that the village it's going to benefit like around Park Boulevard in Streamwood, and then we're going to have some wider median area there, but it's not going to be a continuous turn lane. Our participation was a couple $1,000s for traffic signal work. So it's not a major improvement like you see east in Hanover Park.
No, but we do have considerable accidents. People westbound turning in, going by the Dunkin' Donuts or the shopping center over there.
I think that's where the turning lane's at, by the new Dunkin' Donuts over
Right,
there. It's right in that area.
And Robin Woods on the north and Streamwood. for
Yeah,
eastbound
with Park
traffic.
and, I can't remember the street to the north's name, that's in Streamwood. But it's in that general area.
Roma
And-
Jean Parkway.
Yeah, yeah. that's
Valley
it.
Lane.
And then they are going to put in, I think they're going to put in some sidewalks, or at least, and then if not, they're going to at least put the, what do they call it? What's that?
They're putting in panic.
Crosswalks, but they're putting in like sidewalks or bike areas
Bike trails
for,
or something, yeah.
for like if it's not, they're not going to build it now, but they'll have the room for it in the future. So it's more in that area. It's not, yeah, right. It's not the whole village area. But we are participating along with Streamwood, and it's an IDOT project.
To be completed next year, or?
I don't know the time frame of it, but I would suspect. We have not entered, I just think we just entered into the intergovernmental agreement within the last month. You know, working on IDOT projects and administering them over the years, they could get it started by next summer. Yeah. There's a lot of paperwork in those.
Oh, yeah. Anything else?
Do we have any information on what's going to happen at Dominic's?
It's going to close on the 28th of December, and there's nobody interested in it right now. You read about the ones that were taken by Mariano's. We have done extensive contacting of many grocery stores that are out there. They all say they'll take a look at it. I think there's some other stores interested in getting some of the Dominic stores as a group. Whether this one gets taken or not, I mean, they do the other grocery stores. They all tell you they do a site analysis, like if they were going to build a new store, demographics, market share, market impact, stores, other stores in competition with them in proximity to it, traffic counts, and so that's what they've done so far on the ones that I think there was 11 purchased by Mariano's, 4 by Jewel, and then there's some other store, I can't think of the other store that.
I think Whole Foods was in the market.
Whole Foods is buying 4, so.
What about the existing Walgreens property? Has there been any interest in that?
I've heard that there is interest. The owner just told me that yesterday.
Good,
He said quite a bit of interest,
good.
Really?
which is good.
Yeah. I'm just curious with 2 vacant buildings on the corner of 59 and Stearns, if we've had any takers or anyone interested.
You know, we're in constant contact with the broker of that shopping center, and she's a big broker, Chicago area-wide commercial broker with C.B. Richard Ellis. She believes it'll be filled, whether it'll be filled with another grocery store or whether it'll be carved up in the smaller units. She thinks, she's positive that it'll be filled some manner.
Good.
That's good to hear.
Anything else? Any motions to adjourn?
So moved.
It's been moved. Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.